Prepare to be tilted. This is the long overdue, intentionally ignored Li Ming video. What I'm about to say may shock you, might even frighten you, or make you even close the tab. Orb Build is indeed not that great. Okay, now that I've got your attention, and you're already tilted, bear with me. We're going to talk about Li Ming because Li Ming is the ultimate pooflinger, right? She's just going to throw stuff out there. It's hard not to get stats as Li Ming because you're constantly throwing stuff out there. JHow, I get mad resets on my W all day long. Like, seriously, I get mad resets on, what do you mean? I got 20,000 damage more than the next person. Clearly, this is good. To a degree, you're somewhat right. To a different degree, it's not that good. I actually like it in ARAMs. In regular games, I feel like there's a different focus that you got to have as Li Ming. As much fun as Orb Build can be, and I do believe that Triumvirate at level 4 is actually a pretty viable talent on certain maps, I'm not a big fan of it. Your job as Li Ming is not to just consistently try and do damage. Now, first off, if you're going Orb Build and you're doing a bunch of damage, you should send a thank you note to the enemy team after the game and say, thank you for not using your mouse. Like, that's it. It's like you can dodge orbs from long distances. If you can't dodge an orb at a long distance, you're probably in bronze and you're like, damn, this Li Ming is really strong. Once you start to learn that you don't have to full Prometheus run away from something and you can move up or down, you'll realize Li Ming's probably not as good as you thought she was. So how do we get more consistent damage? How do we get more explosive damage? And how do we really impact a fight? Because Li Ming doesn't fit into every single composition. They've buffed a lot of her talents to make her viable in different ways and try to buff up some of the other ones. Truth be told, Li Ming actually still sits near some of the bottom of the barrel when it comes to overall win rate, and I think that there will be a Li Ming slight rework this year, and we'll see if it changes anything, but a lot of it is based around magic missiles, the skill shots. You can do a lot with them. Arcane Orb, you want to hit as many people as you can from a distance. The farther it is, the more damage you do. And teleport, this is for safety for now. Critical mass, getting your resets. Getting resets on your abilities is what makes Li Ming so appealing. Getting one kill means that everything happens. How do I get one kill? I'm the person that kills them as Li Ming. I'm not out here throwing W's and trying to fling all this stuff out there and doing a bunch of splash damage. I'm going to be the killer. We're going to talk about how Disintegrate and Wave of Force also have two very different uses and should be considered in different ways. So let's talk about Li Ming. All of her level 1 talents are viable. And the reason they're viable, and the first one you always want to look at, is if I'm going against a Zeratul. A lot of Zeratools now have been going a lot of single target damage as opposed to cleave damage, but still, I don't want somebody flanking me and doing bonus damage to me. Force Armor is really easy to hit somebody with your magic missiles to proc this, to get up the stacks on this. It makes it a lot easier to stay alive. They baked in an old talent into this so that you get mana regen when your health is below or when your mana is below 35%. So this helps a little bit in that department. I still don't think it's that great. But Force Armor, as a result, because it has that in there, is a bonus. This is really good against dive-heavy heroes that you know are going to be hitting you pretty hard. This can also work against Kel'Thas Pyroblast. It's kind of hard to pick a level 1 talent and plan for a level 10. If you're going against the Kel'Thas, this is good. 50 spell armor is a tremendous amount of spell armor, and the fact that you can store up to 4 charges, it's also a lot. It's very different than some of the other talents that give you spell armor for duration. If I know I'm getting hit by a Pyroblast, if I know I'm getting dove by a Zeratul, I will just cast magic missiles and hope that they hit somebody. I'm going to aim it at anybody. I literally just want spell armor for the sake of staying alive. If you're dead, you're not doing damage. If you're alive, you still have a chance to be saved, and they're committing a lot of resources to one individual. Once you sustain that, they can't do any more damage, or they don't have much more in the way of buttons to press. Now it's your turn to shine. So Force Armor is a great defensive option. You don't always need this. If I'm going against tanks that I know I'm just going to be able to poke, they're double range, double melee, but I don't have anybody to worry about, I'm not going to care about force armor as much unless I know I'm going against that Kalthos or maybe a Jaina where I'm playing aggressively. Now, I will say this, because the build that we're going to be running, you will be more aggressive. If you're picking this and then you're going into Orb Build, this probably doesn't make as much sense. But force armor now also rises in priority because we're also going to be going into another talent later that says we're going to be playing at a little bit closer range. And we'll talk about how to utilize that. Ether Walker, they buffed this a lot to where you can cast around and do damage, do extra damage with magic missiles. I don't like this because your magic missiles are so much harder to hit. They do bonus damage, but I'm not a big fan of this. I think that if you don't need spell armor, and if you're not on a map where you're going to be having a bunch of globes with you, say Alterac Pass, Power Hungry, not as appealing. Ether Walker can help, but then I would still probably default to Force Armor. Ether Walker, I would say, is probably the lowest on this tier, because Power Hungry now gives me more mana and more spell power. For 20 seconds, it's a decent amount of spell power. That's several rotations. That means I now have that burst capability that I didn't have before. So if I don't need Force Armor, if I feel pretty safe with my healer in my composition, which is something you have to figure out, Power Hungry now rises in priority because I want that bonus damage. Well, this does bonus damage. This is bonus damage. They're the same, effectively, but this does more damage overall in other ways. So Power Hungry and Force Armor are my number 1 and number 2 choices. It just depends on the needs that I need and how well protected I am. If I have a solo tank and triple ranged, I'm probably going to go Force Armor because I don't want to die. If I'm double melee and I have a good healer, I'll consider Power Hungry, even if some of those other circumstances are there. But I always want to be safe than sorry. At level 4... So Triumvirate gives you a reset on your W, or cooldown reduction, I should say, because they lowered the cooldown and buffed a bunch of different talents around orbs not too long ago. I guess it's been a while now. Triumvirate, I think, is okay. It means that you can soften things up and do damage. Now, I want to put into consideration, I think Li Ming with Garrosh is pretty terrible, because your orbs, Garrosh wants to toss people in, you want to hit people from further away. It's much more difficult. I don't really like Triumvirate, but I don't think it's terrible. Charged Blast is also pretty decent. There are merits to using Charged Blast. Basic attacking a hero that was hit by magic missiles does damage. If I have somebody in front of me, now I can get this going. It's a lot more difficult when I try and get that WQ auto attack into E combo. This does give me more single target damage. I actually think all of these can be viable, but Dominance tends to be the one that wins out more than not. I know I don't want to translate competitive to this video, but this was the number 1 choice for a big reason, because you're going to be playing much more aggressively as a Li Ming. It does require your team. If you're a solo carry Li Ming and you're going double, triple melee, and none of those are assassins, then you're probably in trouble, and you might want to go Triumvirate or Charged Blast, because you're going to need damage elsewhere before you ever get resets. So getting resets is somewhat dependent on your team having at least one other damage dealer, which for all intents and purposes is most of the time. Triumvirate just means you're getting a lot of random poke value, and you're probably already getting a lot of random poke value unless you're going double mage, because the other person beside you should have some type of sustained damage. You are the executioner. You are the killer. This doesn't do damage, but this allows me to play more aggressive and to get those resets. So Dominance allows me to stay in a fight longer, and again, we're about to get to why that's better. Triumvirate can be good. Charge Blast, I think that, again, if my team needs it, if we need that single target damage that's going to be there, I can hit them. This, I think, is pretty compositionally dependent, but I have seen a lot of people run into Charge Blast, into Cannoneer, into Fireflies and things like that to guarantee that damage, and then you're kind of a pseudo auto attack Li Ming, and your W is just kind of hitting at medium range. So I don't think these are bad talents. I'm just going to sell you on why this build is. Now, before I go any further, I want you to understand, just because I think this build might be better in most circumstances, which it is, if I'm going against a heavy melee composition, or an Uther composition, or an Uther, or a Garrosh Uther, and who knows, some other melee up there that's going to hurt me, I'm probably not going to play as aggressively. Then I will start to consider Charged Blast. You have to consider these things for yourselves. But if for everything that's normal, it's double melee, double ranged, and a healer, I want to be more aggressive. But these builds can vary based on the enemy team or your own team. This is more of a preferred build that is going to have a higher ceiling instead of just hoping the enemy team doesn't dodge my orbs, which is what a lot of you do. So Dominance allows me to play more aggressive. Triumvirate allows me to poke from a safer distance. Charge Blast gives me more of that focus damage. If we have a lot of CC and we're blowing up a target, I can now make sure all of my magic missiles hit, plus get that bonus damage on there. But now here comes the fun one, because this is something a lot of people don't like to use. And I understand it's big and scary and you're afraid to be aggressive as Li Ming because you just want to go and press W every 3 seconds because that's what your normal build does. And the enemy team is bad and they're just going to eat every single orb. Stop thinking that everybody's going to be just as bad for you. So Calamity. 300 damage baseline. This is a ton of damage. When you consider that your magic missiles, if you hit all 3, and this is level 0 damage, not level 1 damage or level 7 damage, but level 0 damage, 147 damage. We're now looking at the capabilities of 434 plus damage, 440 damage, whatever this may be. It's up there if I hit all 3, which if I'm following up CC, which if I'm a mage player, I always want to follow up CC. If I'm just flinging stuff out there and I never follow up CC, I'm probably doing it wrong. If you ever go to a Master Grandmaster game and you watch, most Li Mings are holding their abilities waiting for tanks. The minute the tank gets any power slides, the Diablo gets a charge flip back, you're now getting guaranteed damage, not just throw it out there and hope it splashes damage. That's where Li Ming becomes more effective. Following up CC as most ranged assassins should do, but if you're trying to generate your own kills, that's not easy. Li Ming she is able to do that, but it's not as easy as me following up a tank and CC and just hitting something that is actually stationary and allowing me to guarantee my shots. So because of that, Arcane Orb is normally held, but we're doing potentially 600 damage there, and then now all of a sudden we're adding in Calamity. So level 0 damage, we can do almost 1,000 damage, which, to put into context, Li Ming and most ranged assassins sit around 1,500 to 1,600 health at level 1. If we have any other type of damage, that's a full combo. It's not always guaranteed that you're going to land the full combo, but that's to put it into perspective on what it looks like if you follow up CC. Now, the reason Calamity can really change the game, and becomes even better at 13, is because if those frontliners are damaged or taking a lot of damage, and I'm hitting a lot of these front lines, or I'm trying to do damage, I can now get in there. Calamity allows me to do a lot more damage to targets. It allows me to play a lot more aggressive. Zai's Vengeance allows me to play much more passive, which is not always what you want to do. Again, there is a place for this. I'm just not a big fan of it because a lot of you just want to stand as far away as you possibly can, press W, press Q, never auto attack, and just hope that my W hits. My W doesn't hit. This is bad. Seeker, for a long time, actually used to be the #1 pick. If I have an abundance of CC and I'm communicating with the people behind me, I might consider Seeker. But again, if I'm focusing on that, I might as well go Calamity. Calamity used to be broken because it used to do damage to minions many, many years ago and made it way too good. Now Calamity used for that damage. Calamity with Dominance means that now you can play much more aggressive, and it gets even better as time goes on because now you're doing all this. Again, there's nothing to say these other builds can't work. You're going to probably tell me that they do work. I just don't care. So Calamity allows you to be aggressive, allows you to make bigger plays. Getting a reset when you can now do the damage. You're following up CC, or you're somehow generating your own combo. You're doing 1,000 plus damage at level 0, and let's say post whatever, you're doing 1,500 to 2,000 damage alone, and you can add an extra after scaling 350 to 400 damage on top of your own combo. You're now looking like an absolute monster, right? So I guess this is with that damage. When you can do 1,500 to 2,000 damage on your own, like that is a substantial amount of damage that you're doing as Li Ming with Calamity. I can now focus tanks. I can get these resets. I can now guarantee kills that other people can't. This is instant damage. This is not me hoping that I can press W 3 seconds later and hoping that I hit. This is me getting guaranteed damage that allows me to do a significant amount of damage. This is slightly less than a flame strike. If you've ever been hit by a flame strike, you know what I'm talking about. So Calamity is instant, impactful, direct damage that I can guarantee hit because my teleport's going to be there for me. And at 13, you already know what I'm talking about. Now, level 10, you have 2 heroics. For what it's worth, Wave of Force is generally better. If you've ever seen some of the bigger plays, you know this is how you can generate your own combos, but we'll leave that to the pros or whatever's left of them. Wave of Force gives me an area effective ability to now also confirm kills. So now I can start to really focus kills down. If I am running Wave of Force versus an ETC, I will never, ever, ever use Wave of Force first unless I have 5 forms of CC behind me. Because if I use Wave of Force and I see ETC on the other side, that ETC is waiting for me to use it because they want to do damage. Now, if I have Wave of Force and I know it guarantees a kill, yeah, I'll use it because I get a reset and I get it right back. But if I'm just randomly using this and I go out there and there's an ETC on the other team and you pick Disintegrate, you need to uninstall and play a different hero, right? Like, there's nothing you can do. Wave of Force is the interrupt you need. People normally pick Li Ming as an ETC interrupt because it's a 20-second cooldown versus a 2-minute cooldown. So Wave of Force gives you that you just don't get. It's so easy to land, it's so easy to hit, and you save your team's life. You can actually kill him with the rest of your buttons, don't worry. If I'm going against an Anubarak that has Cocoon, Cocoon is based on not a health pool, but how many times it takes damage. Similarly to the chest on Blackheart's Bay. Those things go down based on not how much damage they take, but how many times they take damage. Because Disintegrate does rapid damage, Disintegrate now on a 30-second cooldown basically neutralizes a Cocoon, which is why some Anubarak players will actually Cocoon the Li Ming to take her out of the fight to make sure that you at least get a couple seconds value, because at that point, Disintegrate just melts it in half a second, and then it doesn't matter. But outside of those instances, Wave of Force is generally going to be better. You can follow up on your own kills. It gives you guaranteed damage. It doesn't force you to channel for 2.5 seconds. It allows you to continue to get your abilities out. If you go Disintegrate, it is better to make sure that you get your abilities out before using Disintegrate, similar to if you were running Strafe. Wave of Force, though, gives you a lot of protection. It can zone out areas. If you're being dove, you can put space between you and the enemy hero. You can find different ways to use Wave of Force. You can save your teammates. You can help peel. You can do damage. And on a 20-second cooldown, it's pretty good. Now, with all of this being said, Glass Cannon is the one way you want to... I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Illusionist, if you lose more than 20% of your health, it's refreshed. This has a 4 seconds internal cooldown. This can be good against dive heroes, but overall, this can help out in certain situations. The bigger part of this is the teleport range, 50%. You're already scared to run Calamity because you know that puts you in danger. Now I can use Calamity, and I can use my abilities from a slightly farther distance, which means I get more damage from my orb. I can play safer, but it also allows me to chase down and confirm kills. That's the difference, right? So now I can jump forward towards that target and make sure and get my Calamity value. The extra range is pretty substantial when you're playing an aggressive Li Ming, because this does help you a lot. Again, if I'm going against a heavy melee team that I know I'm going to get dumpstered if I try and EN, I'll look towards Cannoneer. This gives me extra damage on my auto attacks, which I know you all love to do that as mages. You should be doing it. And they do spell damage instead of physical, which means that those pesky heroes that have physical armor, which are a lot of frontliners, now take guaranteed damage that's going to be spell damage, and not many of them have the spell armor to try and deal with that. So spell damage helps out a lot more than physical in this instance. So it increases your auto attack, it does more damage. So if I'm not feeling comfortable, Glass Cannon is... you're always towing a line. And the same people that are running Orb Build are the same people that are running Glass Cannon Build, and they're the same people that are hitting the thumbs down on this video. I'm trying to get you to understand that Li Ming is a killer, not a I'm going to poke and pray and hope that somebody on the other team is bad enough to walk into my orb, or one of their teammates is bad enough to splash it onto a target. I'm not, I like to be in control of my damage. I don't want the enemy team to be in control of my damage, which is why Orb Build is not a guarantee. more consistent, more thought-provoking stuff comes at the way of utilizing your level 1 talents appropriately, getting your own damage, hitting your skill shots, and confirming kills. Calamity allows you to confirm your own kills. Glass Cannon, this is a very rare circumstance that I would ever use this. Extra spell power at the cost of health. I had a Li Ming that I was playing on a Smurf account. They always go Orb Build. They always go Glass Cannon. We went against a Zeratul. You can think about what happened. If you can't think about that for yourselves and you just go the same build over and over, this is why I'm making those videos, to try and get you to think about the talents that you pick. Now, 16, I know you instantly look at this one and we're going to ignore it. So there's 2 good talents here. I think Mirror Ball is generally the number 1 you want. This allows you more targeted damage. It's going to add more damage onto this, and you have higher kill potential. Fireflies, though, is actually not bad. This reduces the cooldown and its mana cost as a result, so this allows you to get more consistent damage. If I know I'm being dove very aggressively, or I need that spell armor, this actually works pretty well with force armor. If I'm somehow win a Seeker build, I still only need to hit 3, so this still works, but this can also help. Also, if I went Cannoneer, making sure that whenever I use an ability, my next basic attack does damage. It's pretty cool to have cooldown reduction on Fireflies, because now I'm using magic missiles every 2 seconds, which means that I have an auto attack basically ready for me every single time I use my Q. So Fireflies can work really well in conjunction with Cannoneer and Charge Blast. That now makes it a fantastic synergy. So you can go down this path if the circumstances arise. You just got to figure out where those are. For the general purpose of it, Mirror Ball generally wins out. It's more damage, it's more siege damage, it's more race damage, it's more defense damage. It's all types of things. It's more potential kill damage. Arcane Orbit, no. Now, if I am going against those dive-heavy teams of a Valera, of a Zeratul, of a Samuro, Diamond Skin is really, really good. Now, there's 2 things you can do there. One, if I'm going against a Valera, her range is a little bit weird. But if I did go Calamity and Illusionist, I now have a bigger blink. So what I can do is I can blink onto these targets to reveal them and also make sure that they can't get the type of head start that they want. Or I can blink onto them to do damage, which means that now I have a shield. I've done the initial damage versus them, and whenever they do damage to me, if they hit me really hard, depending on which character you're facing, now if I take 20% of my damage, it's instantly refreshed. So you can preemptively use this so that you get the shield so that they're not actually hitting your health bar, they're actually hitting the shield. And you're doing damage to them, which means it buys you time because they can now stay there less, and hopefully you get a response, and you can potentially get the reset on your Illusionist so that you can now use Diamond Skin again, which means that you're alive. And as long as you're alive, you're doing damage. If you're going Glass Cannon and Fireflies, good luck. If I also see those all those targets and I went Force Armor, I can also preemptively open up with my Q. It's pretty easy to just kind of throw them out there. It's a little difficult for them to walk through. I can use Mirror Ball to give me more of a chance, so I can generate that spell armor so that the first time they hit me, they're not absolutely obliterating me. This works very good against Zeratuls that are coming in and doing damage. These are all things you have to look out for. So if you've gone Force Armor, maybe don't care about Diamond Skin. But if it's an Abathur or something comp that's coming at me, I'm going Diamond Skin to stay alive. I'm never going Arcane Orbit, although you are. Now, level 20 has 2 talents that I think you should really consider, and a 3rd talent which will kind of make sense in a certain situation. Repulsion is so disruptive in the late game. This can actually be counterproductive if your team is hardcore diving a target and somehow you knock them away, and you don't knock them away a little bit, you knock them away a lot of bit. But the thing about this is that it increases your cast range, which means that now you can use this from a safer distance. You can now split the enemy team easier, so you can hit a target into you and then also away. If you're a GM player and you're watching this video, what are you doing even this far into the video because you already know how to play this hero? We've seen plays to where Li Ming would cast abilities this way. The target's over here. They think that they're safe. They want to make the big Pog highlight play. they use Wave of Force to knock them over into their abilities, because most of the time you're dodging the abilities. Wave of Force can knock people back into abilities. And because the extra attack range gives you that ability to reach them, where before you would have to be in a pretty precarious position. So you get the knockback distance, which can displace people, which can peel, does all the things I talked about earlier, but now you can set up more plays because of its cast range. If I'm not as worried about that, I am still trying to absolutely murk people. Talrasha's elements are really good. Casting abilities increase the damage of the next ability by 5% up to 20%. So you can get your abilities through rotation. There'll be a little crown above that so you know when you've got that bonus damage. And so that allows you to get the bonus damage onto those targets to get that crown of Talrasha. And this is something that can work really well. Now, when is it a good idea to use Archon Pure Power? This basically says you don't use any of your abilities and you just stay in Archon mode and use Disintegrate. The only times I'm really going to advocate for this, and these are pretty niche situations, and you've heard me talk about this if you watch some of the other videos. If I'm hitting 20, let's say I'm on Dragonshire, I've hit level 20, I'm on Battlefield of Eternity, the Immortal's pushing in, or I have an objective, I can throw stuff at the core. But one thing that you can do, if you just hit 20 and you're trying to end the game, everything else here looks good. But what you can do is you can just hop into Archon form and then just siege down the core. This allows the Immortal to hit, the Punisher to hit. You don't even really have to move that far. You can stay really far back. That way you can siege on the core from a very safe distance. You're not a priority target, although you should be. And if they do come at you, you're so far away with Archon that you're going to have some degree of safety. So Archon has worked for that very purpose. I don't really recommend it any other time, except for in one very rare circumstance. If it's a late game, it's level 20, and I've been getting absolutely destroyed all game, and I don't have help, or I'm just trying to dismount somebody, I have no problem using Archon and just acting like sonar. All those stealth heroes that are coming at me, I will just spin in a circle. If you come at me, then I'll just reveal you, thus making my life easier. This is mostly for Valeera. If not, then I can just activate out of it and go back to casting regular abilities once my job is done. I don't advocate for you using it that way. I think Talrasha's Elements is really safe. Repulsion is both very good. So for a lot of these reasons, Li Ming, a lot of people love this because they're always going to have splash damage with Triumvirate, Zeiss, and Arcane Orbit. You're always going to have damage. You're always going to have numbers. There is no denying that. But if I want to play Li Ming to be a killer, which if I'm a mage in this situation and my abilities do this much damage and I'm just casting Orb at max range, the odds of me killing them are highly dependent on that person being bad. So I want to take more control over my build. I want to do more damage. I want to set up stuff, and I want to be the finisher. I can do all of that with my base kit and moving into Calamity, because all of that allows me to play more aggressive. I can pick whichever level 1 talent between these two that make me feel good. Dominance can be good. Triumvirate is okay. Charge Blast are all good. At level 7, I am highly prioritizing Calamity. It's not 100% pick rate, but I'm highly prioritizing this because now this gives me the ability to kill people. I get a reset off of that. I can now use all of my buttons again and press E again, which is also more damage. These dependent mostly Wave of Force, but my goodness, if you're playing against an ETC and you pick Disintegrate, I'm telling you, like, if somebody starts flaming you, you better just say, yep, I know. Level 13 Illusionist with this build. If you didn't go Calamity, Cannoneer is good because you should be auto-attacking. You don't want to play at max range. At 16, there's 3 good talents here. Mirror Ball, Fireflies for certain. There used to be people that would swear by Fireflies. Mirror Ball, I think, is just generally going to be more consistent. Diamond Skin, if you're safe. Arcane Orbit, never. And then, of course, the 20s we just talked about. So for that, Li Ming can be good. And when we talk about what maps she can be good on, Hanamura Temple, I think, is terrible. Any map that's wide open and you can't force people into choke points and they can run any direction to dodge your skill shots is bad, which is why Hanamura and Alterac are generally pretty tough. Volskaya is kind of okay and not bad. Cursed Hollow, it's pretty good for poking down the Immortal. Pretty tough against heroes like Garrosh and an Ubrak because they'll block a lot of your abilities, but at the same time, you can be there to pop Disintegrate. Warhead Junction, same as the first two. Brax's Holdout, I think she's absolutely atrocious here because you don't have much. Disintegrate's not that great for Wave Clear, neither is Wave of Force, and it's not going to be great. Tomb of the Spider Queen, okay. Battlefield of Eternity, not bad. Infernal Shrines, think about all those skill shots you're going to try and hit through a bunch of minions. If the enemy team fights off the shrine, that's when you're good, and that's generally only the top shrine. So if the enemy team wants to fight off the shrine, you as Li Ming now might actually be better, but I still don't like her here. Towers of Doom, good for poke a lot there. Sky Temple is not bad because it is open, but at least you're in a targeted area. Garden of Terror, okay. And Dragonshire, kind of okay. You're going to have a lot of opportunities to poke down people, but I'm not really sold there. Blackheart's Bay, okay. The one thing with Li Ming that you should always be trying to do is use your Arcane Orb to hit the side of a minion wave. You never want to hit it right at the front. And if the enemy team is around you and you can't get that side angle, that's okay. There's actually a trick that if you time it, and a lot of it is based on understanding fog, minions will always walk together before they square up. So if you actually cast, and you can base this off of your own, 30-second mark is when they always hit in the middle of the lane, and you can base this off of your own without ever seeing the other minions. You can actually hit them on the side before the minions ever group up, and your splash damage should reasonably hit 6, potentially all 7. You can get maximum value. If that doesn't work, then you can always take out one of the front melee minions. So there's stacks of 3 with one in the middle. You can always take out one of the melee minions and now shoot your Arcane Orb so it splashes onto a minimum of 5 and try and take another angle, and you can get that. So there's a lot of different things you can do as Li Ming to manipulate your wave clear. I've seen far too many Li Ming mains that will just shoot it directly at the front 3 minions. You're only hurting yourself at that point. If it's the only way you can do it because the other team is swarming it, sure, that makes sense. But if you're not trying to clear things in a more efficient way, it looks bad. It looks bad. So there's a lot of things you can do with Li Ming. I think she's highly difficult. Like, you can get out drafted if you early pick Li Ming because you'll never get resets and you never get kills. Again, your damage might look okay, but if you're not killing anybody, you're not picking the right hero. Maybe it was your team. Sometimes that happens, but you need to take more consistent approach, more control over your Li Ming, and try and make that work. So for that reason, Li Ming right now is all about everybody going Orb Build and Glass Cannon. I say save that for ARAMs. Maybe it works in bronze or silver because the other team doesn't know how to use their mouse, then that's okay. But I think if you're really wanting to start to take Li Ming to the next level, you need to figure out how to be aggressive. You need to figure out how to be a killer. You need to figure out how to set up all your own stuff and then start to use Calamity to get those resets. And you'd be surprised at how much more damage you can do in those fights, much more targeted damage. Also, I cannot stress this enough. If you're any mage player out there, Li Ming, you can kind of set up your own stuff. But if I ever follow up on CC, and I have an ETC that just slides a target, and I'm busy throwing my Arcane Orb over here while ETC slides over here, we're both going to do damage. We both might threaten somebody, but hot dang, man, if I just waited 2 seconds and shot my Arcane Orb and 3 magic missiles at a target that's sitting still for 1 second, and then I Calamity that target, they die, okay? This doesn't kill people. This does. So try being more patient as a mage player, Li Ming in particular, and see how that far that gets you. If you come back here and you're like, you know what, I died a lot, I tried to use Calamity, it's probably because you're using Calamity for damage on a 50% target instead of a 20% target, and they don't die. A lot of times you want to use Calamity as a finisher, not as an opener, but if I'm going against a Garrosh who's already tossed somebody, and I can see that, you know, maybe an ETC has already power slid into my team, I will combo that ETC and Calamity onto him. Why? Because I know that he can no longer slide and he's no longer a threat. Those are ways that you can do it when people are healthier because you're going to do a lot of damage with Calamity. But generally, I want to save it for the killer. But I can also use it to punish people that have overextended and already used their CC, barring I'm fully aware of what also they might have in store in CC on the other side. So play with discipline, follow up CC, set up your own kills, and make a lot of that work and see how that goes for you for Li Ming. Stop playing Orb.